And what you see is that the wisdom of God that Daniel had in his life allowed him to survive a culture that was incredibly hostile. Daniel was taken captive. He was kidnapped as a young man. He was taken into this country, and then when he gets there, they change his name. Now, his name was Daniel, which means God is judge. They changed it to Belteshazzar, which means keeper of secrets. They said, you're no longer going to be a Hebrew child that it worships the true God of Israel. You're going to be one of our wise men who holds on to the secrets of our people. You see, they brought him into that culture and they tried to change his identity, try to change his name, change his faith, change everything about him. And you know what I see when I look around today in our culture? I see a culture that wants to take our kids and make them look just like everybody else. Wants to conform them to everything else that's going on in this world. Wants to make them think like everybody else thinks. Wants to make them act like everybody else acts. Dress like everybody else dresses. That's what they were doing to Daniel. They were squashing out his identity. But Daniel maintained his identity in his faith. Daniel's name is changed to Belteshazzar, but what's incredible is that as you read later on in the book of Daniel, that the people of the Babylonian nation, they call him Daniel. Why? Because he maintained his identity. And while he had a name that they had given him in Babylon, he was still known as Daniel because he was still the man that he was when he came to that nation. He had held on to his identity. One of the ways that he does this is he says, I'm not going to defile myself with a portion of the king's meat. Now, on a list of things that would have been different between Babylon and Israel, the king's meat probably would have been pretty far down on the list. And I imagine some people around Daniel were like, really? You're not going to eat the steak because it's the king's? You're not going to eat the steak because it's probably been offered up to their gods? That's where you're going to draw the line? I mean, there's some pretty big fights to fight here. You've been kidnapped. You're not going to eat the meat. But do you notice that language that the scriptures use? Daniel purposed in his heart. He had made a decision that he was going to follow the wisdom of God, the teaching of God that he had been taught when he was a young child, that he was going to follow it all the way, even in a difficult land, even as a captive.